Alright, hello everyone, my name is Fray from Minion Gaming, and what we are going to talk about today is how to evaluate particular cards in Arena. I am a big fan of Hearthstone, obviously, and I wanted to make this video to try to make things a little bit simpler, because Hearthstone can be a pretty complicated game if you're generally new, and maybe even if you're an experienced player, you can learn a couple more things and understand how to evaluate cards a little bit more mathematically, a little bit more analytically. We're going to take a purely mathematical approach, and you'll understand once I get into it. So a little bit about me: I've had a couple 12-win arenas, and the highest rank I achieved is 7 on ladder, which isn't necessarily very good, but I didn't play a lot of ladder, so hopefully you understand that I have a somewhat good idea of what's going on. First, we want to talk about the parts to evaluating minions. This video is only going to talk about minions that have 3 or more cost, 3 or more mana in cost, and we're only looking at minions themselves. We're not actually going to look at 1-drops or 2-drops, because we're going to look at those in a later video because they're a beast of their own. So the first thing that's most important is the stats on a minion. Second thing is the distribution of those stats. It doesn't matter if you have 0 attack and 4 health, because you don't have any attack, so that card's kind of a waste. And then third, we're looking at card text, so we want battle cries, death rattles, all those things, because not every card in the game is vanilla, having no card text. So part 1, stats, we're looking at what I have coined as the ×2+1 rule. I'm not sure anyone else has said this, so hopefully I'm not plagiarizing anyone that I don't know about. But for cards over 3 mana, you want to multiply their mana cost by 2 and add 1, and that's what you would call ideal stats, and we'll get into an example of that in just a second. Part 2 is the distribution of stats. Now, generally you want your health and attack values to be pretty close to each other, but generally health is a little bit better than attack. And the example I could think of is the Fen Creeper, which is a 5 mana, 3 attack, 6 health taunt minion. It's bad in terms of stats, but it has a good amount of health to attack balance, so that sometimes that card can get some good value. So first, let's start off with talking about the Chillwind Yeti. So if we're going to take the ×2+1 rule, we're going to multiply the mana cost by 2, and we're going to get 8. And then we're going to add that 8 and we get 1 and we get 9. So we want 9 worth of stats in this card. And if you take a look, we got a 4 plus a 5 and we got 9. So we have the amount of stats that we're looking for. So this card is probably good. Now what's important to look at is the distribution. We have 4 attack and 5 health, and that's a pretty good distribution of stats. So that's very good in the sense that this card is likely a good choice, and it turns out it is. Chillwind Yeti is a top pick in Arena, and it probably will be for a very long time because its stats are so good. Now let's look at a card like War Golem. War Golem is a 7 mana 7/7, obviously, as you can see, and it has no card text, so we're going to apply the ×2+1 rule. So 7 times 2 is 14, we add 1 and we get 15, and so we compare that to the War Golem, which only has 7 plus 7 is 14 in stats. So the stats aren't optimal, but the stats aren't necessarily bad. It's only 1 less. 14 divided by 15 is very close to 1, so in a sense it's not as detrimental as if you had a lower cost minion that was missing that 1 extra stat, but in this case War Golem is considered an average card. It's nothing necessarily amazing, and it's probably because it lacks that extra health that it could desperately use. And this kind of plays in here. Would you rather have a spider tank, obviously costing 3 mana with 3 and 4 in stats, or would you rather have an Ironfur Grizzly, which has taunt but has 3 mana, or 3 attack and 3 health? And the answer is, in my opinion at least, I would much rather prefer the spider tank over the Ironfur Grizzly, because the stats are so important in Arena. Now, in a constructed sense, the fact that the spider tank is a mech also matters. Generally in Arena, it's not going to be too big a deal, but the mech part makes it even better than necessarily the beast. Unless you're playing Hunter, that's a whole different concern about synergy. We'll talk about that in a later video as well. So let's look at a card like Lost Talstrider. So this card, we apply the ×2+1 rule, so we're looking for 9 worth of stats. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. And we look, it also has 9 stats, so cool, we're looking at the number that we need and we want. The downside about this card is actually the distribution. This card is good, but it's not fantastic. Would you rather have this card, or would you rather have a Yeti? And the reason why a Yeti is better is because there are a lot of 4 mana spell, or 4 damage that can be dealt, compared to 5. 5 is harder number to come by. And just off the top of my head, the cards I can think of that deal 5 damage exactly are the Druid Starfire, which costs 6 mana, and the Druid Starfire, which costs 5 mana. And also you don't get to use it for its board clear purposes. So you have to spend more money than you spent to remove your Yeti, versus a Lost Tall Strider, which can be taken out by a Flame Cannon, which is the mage 2 mana, deal 4 damage to a random enemy minion. It could be taken out by the Druid Swipe, which is a 4 mana, deal 1 damage to all adjacent, or deal 4 damage to your target minion, and deal 1 damage to all adjacent opponents. Or it could be taken out by something like a Eviscerate that's been comboed, or which is obviously a 2 mana, deal 2 damage, combo deal 4 damage. Or it could be taken out by something like a Frostbolt plus a hero ability, so that's 4 mana, so you can get your value back. And so, that being said, the distribution here isn't as good as the Yeti, and hopefully that whole host of examples helped out. So part 3 is card text, because most cards aren't vanilla. You're not going to see all these cards that are, you see, have no card text in the middle. So what are some effects that cards or minions generally have worth? And so I have a whole list of examples on the screen. The Mage spell Arcane Intellect, 3 mana, draw 2 cards, has a good sense of telling us that drawing a card is worth about 1.5 mana. Now we look in the middle, Dark Bomb, Frostbolt, Quickshot, all of these cards are deal 3 damage, and they cost 2 mana. So we can use some simple math and basically say that 1 mana is worth, can I not actually calculate words properly? 1 mana is worth about 2 divided by 3, 1.5 damage. Am I calculating that wrong? I am calculating that wrong. 1 mana is worth 0.66 damage, 2/3 of damage. I don't know why I said that. And then finally we have Hand of Protection, which is give minion Divine Shield. That being said, let's look at the card Gnomish Inventor. So, normally we'd be looking at a card that's 4 mana, so we're looking for 9 worth of stats, 4 times 2, obviously, 8 plus 1, 9. But we have the Battlecry Draw a Card. So, we know that Draw a Card, as explained by this slide, is worth about 1.5 mana. So, with this Battlecry taken into account, we're looking for a card that costs 2.5 mana for 2/4 in stats. Okay, so now we're looking at a card 2.5 times 2 is 5, plus 1 is 6. Does the Gnomish Inventor have those 6 worth of stats? It does. This card is a good card in Arena because it has good stats for what it provides. Also, it refreshes your hand, which is especially good in late game, and very rarely you'll come to a point where fatigue is really bad. Now let's move on to Bomb Lobber. Bomb Lobber, Battlecry, deal 4 damage to a random enemy minion, and it costs 5, and its stats are 3/3. So if we were applying the times 2 plus 1 rule, we're looking for 11 worth of stats, and this card only has 6. But the deal 4 damage to a random enemy minion is actually very powerful. It's almost as if you were saying, draw and play a Flame Cannon, and play a 3/3 minion. Now with that being said, Flame Cannon costs 2 mana to play, but its effect is comparable to the Bomb Lobber. So let's say we're looking at a 3 mana, maybe slightly better, 3/3 in stats. So this card is above average. It's not fantastic because it doesn't have the massive advantage in stats, but considering its effect, deal 4 damage to a random enemy minion, which is worth between 2 and 3 mana, and it's worth 3 mana in the case that you can know the target that you're attacking. Think about it. Shadow Bolt, which is a Warlock card, is 3 mana, deal 4 damage to a minion. So in the case that Bomb Lobber knows which target it's attacking, so there's only 1 creature on the board, it's a 3 mana effect and that leaves 2 mana for 3/3 in stats. So that's considerably above average. So this card is pretty good as well. Now let's look at a card like Ironforge Rifleman. Ironforge Rifleman, deal 1 damage. So we've concluded that dealing 1 damage is equivalent to around 2/3 of a mana crystal, so 0.66 or so. So Ironforge Rifleman, essentially, considering its Battlecry, it's worth 2 1/3 mana for 2/2 worth of stats. So times 2 plus 1 rule, we're looking for 4.66 plus 1, 5.66, around 6 worth of stats. And this card has 4. So this card is considerably below average. It's actually very bad. If you have the opportunity to pick this card, I don't suggest it. It's very poor. And last but not least, we're going to end the video here. We're looking at a Force Tank Max. Now, Force Tank Max is a big card, and big cards are generally pretty good in Arena. And you'll understand, as we talked about, Hand of Protection is 1 mana, give a minion Divine Shield. So if this card, factoring in the Divine Shield, it's a 7 mana, 7/7, because I took away the 1 mana and I took away the Divine Shield, they calculated. So, applying the times 2 plus 1 rule, it's very similar to War Golem in the sense that it's a 7 mana, 7/7. It's a little bit on the lacking side in terms of stats, but it's not that bad. And it's good enough to be played, and it's a big burly minion and it's pretty strong. So, with that being said, Force Tank Max is an average card. So we've gone through a whole bunch of different effects that cards could have. Hopefully I've covered a couple bases, and hopefully you think about picking cards in Arena a little bit more mathematically with this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you would like it, be sure to leave a thumbs up and comment. If you'd like to hear something more about a Hearthstone tutorial, leave it in the comments below and I'll definitely read it, I'll definitely look to it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.